goes in for it, and it's secured by Bengi. That is a big deal. SKT, Shockwave, a shutdown. They've got 3 already. They're looking to kill absolutely everybody. They're still going in. Engage. The stun against the wall. Peanut could go down to Bengi, getting the kill again as they move on to the Nexus turrets. SKT punched their ticket to their 3rd World Final.
Hello and welcome to Worlds Tonight. I'm Rivington III along with Jake Spawn Tiberi, Joshua Jatt, who just got finished casting what could have been, I think, the best of 5 we have actually seen on the world stage.
I mean, you're always impacted by recency bias, but I said right at the end of the cast that was the best of 5 I've ever seen.
It was, please.
I think it was the highest level best of 5 we've ever seen. This
That's
was
a good way to put it.
Two teams like playing top League of Legends. They were playing to their peak during that series as well. You know, a couple of mechanical fumbles, but that's what happens when you've been playing the game for 5 hours. But overall, I think from a strategic level, from an individual play, and then of course SKT's team play, you have to say that was a great best of 5.
And also from like an epicness standpoint, to support MF games, Bengi coming in off the bench to go 3-0 in the series. And I actually have to read a quote from Reddit right now. I have it on my phone. So this is the post-game thread, the best comment I've probably ever seen in the post-game thread by Daniel LZZ. First Tom, and now Blink. How many times must the Lord and Savior Bengi resurrect from his grave and become SKT's beacon of light after the other junglers loses 2 of the games? The jungle himself and the right hand of God is victorious along his team once again. Faker and Bengi, truly the greatest duo in the history of League.
There it is.
That's the whole series. I think we're done. The segment's over.
And you can join us at YouTube. No, really though, looking at game 1, it looked like it was going to be that way again. ROX came in, they tried to put up a few ganks, SKT squirmed out of them, and it seemed like everything was just going to be clean once again.
Yeah, and this was the biggest thing, right? Because when you have a look at this game, it was about the 2 failed ganks pre-15 minutes and then not being able to battle your way back into it. I mean, Peanut looked like he was nervous, honestly.
Yeah, Peanut definitely had some small fumbles like at the very start, but the series itself was just so damn competitive. Like, look at the rate at which they were just flashing out the abilities, how much they were pushing each other in these ganks, and how close it really was.
Yeah, and the turnaround, time and time again, the ability to be able to just, you know, back away enough to be able to re-engage off some of these ganks. It was absolutely phenomenal.
In an Elder Dragon, the one that could have sealed the deal for a 3x of Infernal towards ROX here, but again, SKT.
Don't underestimate how clutch the smite was, even in that situation. I mean, I believe Peanut smote early to get it to 100, and then Bengi was able to clean it up. That impacted the fight afterwards, for sure.
And then Blank is in. We head to game 2, and it seems like ROX as well looks to innovate, and they change things up.
Yeah, exactly right. This is where we see the support misfortune for the first time. This is where we see the oppressive bottom lane, and it is just going to be Gorilla and Prey time and time again, setting up these plays for the team.
Yeah, and Peanut was really also playing at an extremely high level on Lease in this game. And, you know, you saw the few rare mistakes there from SKT, but this time was them even fighting back. Even when ROX Tigers had what seemed like a stranglehold on the game, they were always just so close. That's why this series was insane. There was never really a dull moment.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't. That might have been the best Ashe hour ever, honestly. I mean, he fired it out. He knew where he was going to teleport from. That was godly.
I love when we have these segments where we can say of all time ever, like 6 years into League of Legends, and we're throwing all these greatest moments into one series, but that's really what happened here tonight.
And this as well was very surprising to me because we're not used to seeing SKT not be able to adapt to something, and again, the MF comes out, and SKT almost seems lost in their gameplay.
Well, ROX have always been the innovators, and you can see with this Ashe misfortune, it's the exact same thing. It's a bully lane that they've come up with to punish the immobile Zyra, and you know, SKT, it took them 2 games. That's longer than it's ever taken them in the past. They finally had the answer to it, but it definitely was punishing them.
And the answer to the misfortune support was actually to ban it. So they never solved the puzzle. They actually couldn't figure it out within the series. But what they did use to solve the puzzle was actually a Bengi sub who played his first Nidalee game ever in game 4.
Yeah, not only was the power coming from the bot lane of that MF, Peanut was also helping out with ROX, so Bengi had to step back in. Bengi had to put up the fight.
And we were watching it together, Riv. Upstairs, we're sitting there, and we just could not believe that this is a guy that has been benched, pulls out a champion he has never played competitively, and then he's diving between 2 turrets. He's just taken over.
Yeah, and some very small missteps here where he does pick up a double kill, but then goes a little bit too far, baits him in a little bit, but they just kept extending their lead in this one.
And honestly, the ability to continue to roll with these punches, ROX, even though they were losing out this game incredibly hard, you could see that they were still resilient. They still had that, mental fortitude to stay in. SKT, at this stage, is clicking on all cylinders, and they're impossible to go with when they're like that. But ROX tried to stay with them.
And this game 5 was incredibly intense because of this move by Peanut. He read this early jungle so amazingly well, hitting the top lane where you're expecting a top lane gank, and gets the first blood onto Bengi.
Yeah, 100%. And when you lock in the Jhin, the Karma, and the Jace, your poke comp comes online on one item, and that is so incredibly early.
But as we've seen time and time again, a 1,000 goal lead early does not get you a win against SKT. They countered with the Shockwave, and they continually went after ROX Tigers. The swinging point of the series there was them failing to get this Baron. Well, they got the Baron, they just lost the fight afterwards.
Yeah, exactly right. And when you give SKT that much, when you give these brilliantly, individually talented players, this team that is built so much on discipline and teamwork, any way back into a game, they are going to make you punish. They're just going to take over, and with a team fighting comp like that we've seen so many times before, they just absolutely crush ROX.
And in that game 5, I thought it was going to be SKT's going in. They always have clean gameplay when they need to find it. Bengi helped do that, and we saw that they were able to come out very strong. Game 5 was theirs, and SKT just moves on.
SKT have to be favorites for their 3rd straight World Championship now, advancing to the finals, unless Samsung or H2K can dethrone them, which is going to be our semifinal we have tomorrow. Unreal.
That's the thing. As SKT moves on, SSG versus H2K is going to be another matchup. Before we jump into that, into our next segment, I have to ask, is there a power that can come from these teams that could have beat ROX or SKT if they both went through? If either of them, I should say.
Honestly, if those two teams play at that level, I don't think there's any League of Legends team that's still in Worlds, that has left Worlds, that can go with them, because they're just such a complete package throughout the early, mid, and late game stages. What you need to do is you need to try and find something different, like the AP Misfortune, that upsets them, that rattles them just that little bit, then take advantage of the early game and start snowballing, because we've seen it so many times this World. That is your only way in against the true elite teams.
Yeah, it was incredible watching these teams. And in the highlights, yes, you saw the small missteps. Oh, he didn't quite flash you over the wall. I should have flashed that Shockwave. But those were like the only mistakes. The way they were playing the map and inferring knowledge off of so many of the other plays was just amazing League of Legends to see.
Absolutely. A score has been settled between last year's finalists. SKT will be moving on as ROX failed to win in the best of 5 today. And they'll be moving on versus either H2K or Samsung Galaxy. We'll talk about that match in just a little bit, so be sure to stick with us. If you're watching on the client, head over to youtube.com/LOL esports so you can hang out for the rest of the show. All right, so quite a dominating match we just watched from both teams, which means whoever won, Samsung or H2K, is also going to have the work cut out for them. But how do we think Samsung H2K is actually going to go? Because this may be a match that could go 3-0 or just be as level as the one we saw tonight for a semifinal.
When you have a look at these two teams, and I'm on the analyst desk tomorrow, so I've looked at them a little bit so far.
I can't wait to join you.
Yeah, so when you have a look at these two teams, it looks like they have very similar strengths in the early game, but in reality they don't. H2K build much bigger gold leads through individual play and individual laners, and then they kind of have to close the game out soon, otherwise they slip and lose a little bit of control.
Yeah.
At the same time, when you have a look at Samsung, they look like they have these big gold leads, but they're relatively even at 15, and then they accelerate the pace of the game like I have never seen before out of a League of Legends team. Their 15 to 22 minutes is honestly stellar.
Yeah, it's pretty much everything post-15 when you're looking at the Samsung team. Their early laning phase is really not that dominant, and they actually don't draft to crush the lanes that often. In fact, when they've lost, the one game they lost, it's because they were pushed in all of their lanes. Outside of that, though, their late game map play is extremely good. And I mean, we saw a lot of great late game map play from both SKT and ROX tonight. Samsung's the closest team in the tournament that can match that type of play in the mid and late game.
And I agree with all of that. And that's where H2K has to look at this and be like, that's our one window. You know, we got to get Ryu on a bully and control Crown in the laning phase, not let him ever get to that team fighting, and then pick something that shoves bottom lane in hard. Because we've seen Core JJ, when he gets on anything that has global pressure, you know, Bard, Tahm Kench, you know, even Zyra that can roam around the map after they're pushed in, this guy is an absolute catalyst for success for Samsung. So I really do think that, you know, bottom side of the map is going to be a heavy influencer pre-15 minutes.
I love the word influencer in that, but I agree that like H2K could end up falling in this series. They can make history if they're able to beat Samsung because they'd be the European team making it all the way to the finals. But they have been a dominant early game team. So dominant that they actually haven't had to display any mid-game or late-game skill because they have such magnificent goal leads. And you have to look at who they have actually played. Like, all the teams in the semifinals had never played other Korean teams. So that's like the minor thing you can take away. But H2K has played 3 games against Albus Nox Luna, 2 games against INTZ, in which they're 5-0. But they are then 2-1 against EDG, who had a horrific Worlds, and 1-1 against AHQ in their 2 closest games. So just from a strength of schedule perspective, they are unproven. And yes, they've had the amazing laning phases where they've completely outclassed their opponents. I need to see if they can do that against Samsung.
I completely agree. And when you have a look at the EDG ones, I think it's the most telling because when they lost to EDG, it actually was falling down a little bit in that area and not being able to keep up. And then when you have a look at when they win, it's because Jankos is completely outclassing Clearlove, who, by the way, is not on my post-World's top 20 list, that guy.
Really?
Yeah, he's crushed my heart and soul. But
You guys have been asked for one, so
I think we might have a look at maybe potentially doing one.
Bengi, no, I'm just kidding.
But
it's going to be fun.
I think that, yeah, you're completely right in the fact that it's untested, and it's also in a way that is very hard to shore up because we've seen them be sloppy macro-wise and setup-wise in 30 to 45-minute games, and I think that that's not something that you go away in like 1 week. You're like, we now understand how to play the mid to late game. This is easy. Why weren't we doing this before? It is really hard. It's not a draft thing. It's purely communication. It's purely teamwork and discipline, and that's really not something you can quickly just instill in a team.
All right, gentlemen, as we come to the end of Worlds tonight, I have to ask you to get in the hot seat. If it wasn't hot before, probably is now. What are your predictions for tomorrow's game? Samsung Galaxy H2K.
My pick'em has been on fire in the bracket stage. That was terrible in the group stage, but I'm 100%. I
Are
picked
you
SKT.
telling me when it's whittled down to less teams, you're doing better?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
As soon as the matches are easier to pick. I have Samsung beating H2K, and then I have SKT winning the final.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for, as final as well, since that goes through.
I have Samsung beating H2K as well. I still think it's going to be close just because I think that the early game is going to be what decides it from H2K's point of view. So I do believe that Samsung will take it. And that will be great for everyone because then I can stop saying H2K in my way that I say it and, stop getting tweets.
A HQ and H2K? I think it's legitimate.
It's legit?
Yeah.
Got it.
Thank goodness I got some validation.
I say
You're
Dragon.
Australian. Your
I
H
also
is
said
upside down.
Ragnarok when I think it's Ragnarok.
I was about to say, the Australian and the Canadian are saying that the way we speak English is fine. You heard it here first, Riv. We're great.
It creates good drama.
Absolutely. I love
when
it.
you
No
borrow
wuckers.
sayings from other languages.
Well, you've heard what these guys have to say. I don't vote. I'm a hashtag may the best team win. So if you're that way, may the best team win. That's going to be it for Worlds tonight. Be sure to join us tomorrow for Samsung Galaxy versus H2K as we find out which our final semifinalists will move on to face SKT in Los Angeles. Have a good night.
He goes in for it, and it's secured by Bengi. That is a big deal. SKT, Shockwave, a shutdown. They've got 3 already. They're looking to kill absolutely everybody. They're still going in. Engage the stun against the wall. Peanut could go down to Bengi, getting the kill again as they move on to the Nexus turrets. SKT